Welcome back. In this chapter we're going to learn about how to connect a MongoDB database to Node.js. Before, in this course, we've discussed the mean stack, which is the most common web application stack that utilizes Node, and MongoDB is the M in mean, so this is the database of choice usually for Node.js. If you're familiar with SQL, here's a table of concepts. If not, I'll explain them from the ground up. So fields are basically fields in a JSON object. So it says beast in there, but for all intents and purposes, we're using Node.js, so we can treat it as JSON. So documents are JSON objects that can contain fields with key names, whatever you like, and values, whatever you like. Then you have collections of documents, and you can define these collections however you wish. And collections exist in a database, and you can have multiple databases on the same server. So a good example might be you might have a collection of users, and each document is one user, and it stores their email, username, and password, for example. One important distinction for those of you familiar with SQL is that MongoDB doesn't have a schema, which means that in SQL, all rows in a table must have the same columns, but this is not the same in MongoDB. Different documents in the same collection can have different fields, so the structure isn't as well defined, and that means it's more difficult to validate documents are correct, but it also means that there's more flexibility when developing apps, and you don't have to decide on the structure of your database right away, and there's room for change. Now, just understanding these concepts with me speaking and looking at this diagram might be quite difficult, but over the course of this chapter we'll use MongoDB in simple ways, and then finally connect MongoDB to our chat app so we can store chat histories persistently and handle multiple different chat rooms, etc. So in the next video we'll first install MongoDB on your machine so you can start using it. See you then. Welcome back. In this video I'll show you how to download MongoDB onto your machine so we can start using it to improve our web apps. So here's the MongoDB homepage, which you can simply find by searching for it in a search engine. And you can see it's trying to sell you stuff, so you need to navigate to the right place. So first we're going to click Get MongoDB. And we want server, not cloud, because it's trying to sell you stuff. And we want MongoDB community server. This is the free version, and this is the only version we need because we're going to be developing test apps, not production ones. You want to go for the current release and then select the right operating system for you. Hopefully it's selected the right one already, but if it hasn't, just make sure that it has, and then you can download the package. It's quite a large download, so I've downloaded mine already. But you need to download yours, and once you've done so, then feel free to rejoin the video, but otherwise pause it here. Okay, so now you've downloaded it, we can launch the installer. Now this installer will probably take quite a while depending on how good your computer is. So the first thing you want to do is accept the license agreement and optionally read it, and then click next. And then you want to just go for a complete installation. We don't want to do this. We don't want to do a custom installation, that's more advanced. So then the next thing is install MongoDB as a service, and you want to do that because that allows MongoDB to run in the background, which is what we need. And you want to run the service as a network service user if you can, but you need admin privileges for that. And then you call it MongoDB, and then you can choose the directories, but I'm going to leave them as a default if you want. But you can change them if you want, sorry. And then we click the MongoDB Compass is a product they're trying to sell you basically, but you can use it for free. It allows you to visualize your database, but we don't need that, so I'm going to skip that. But if you want to install it for a free trial, then feel free. Otherwise, just begin the installation process. This will take quite a while, so I will rejoin you once it's finished. Okay, so now it's finished. We can click, just quickly press finish, and then we're done. In the next video we'll see how to use MongoDB and connect it to our web apps. Welcome back. In this video we're going to learn how to connect the MongoDB database you just installed on your computer to your Node.js app. So the first step is to create a new folder, which will be our workspace for the project, which I've created here. Then you're going to want to open a command prompt and enter that directory in the command prompt by using the cd command. And then we're going to do npm init as usual to create a new package that I'll call MongoDB workspace. And then I'll just leave everything else as the default. And then we need to do npm install MongoDB, which will install the driver that allows our app to connect to the database. And then once that's installed, we need to run the database itself. So first of all, you need to find the directory that the database is installed in. This will be whatever you selected it to be in the installer when you had the option. If you left it as default, then on Windows, you're looking for C, program files, MongoDB, server, and then the current version number, which for me is 4.0, but might be different for you, /bin. And then you want to copy this into the command prompt. So you start off with a double quote, and you want to make sure you're doing this while cded into your workspace directory, as this will be the directory that the database stores all the files. And then you copy in that directory and then add /mongod.exe and then end it off with another double quote. And that will execute MongoDB, and you can see a lot of output here, but that just means the database is running. Then we're going to want to open up a second command prompt and again cd into our workspace directory. This will be the command prompt we use to eventually run our server, like so. So we just cd in, so that's already. And then you're going to want to create a server file, so I'll create a new file called server.js. And then open it up in your IDE so we can start writing some code. Okay, so it's now open and we've got a blank file. And then we're going to want to start writing code to connect to our app. So the first thing we need to do is get the Mongo client, which we get from the module we just installed. So Mongo client is equal to require, you guessed it, MongoDB, which we just installed, but this time we're going to add an extension, Mongo client. So we're not just importing the entire package. And then we're going to want to then create a new client, which will be called client is equal to new Mongo client. And then we need to put in the URL of our database. If you've not set it as something else, then the default is MongoDB //localhost 27017. And assuming you haven't changed it, that should work just fine. And then we need to do client.connect, and then we'll have a callback function with an error in case it doesn't connect fine. And then if there's an error, we'll just console.log there has been an error. Otherwise, we'll say connected successfully. And then you can do this, const db is equal to client.db and then a name of the database, so maybe test. And if that database called test doesn't already exist, then it will create it automatically as a new empty database. And then down here in the future episodes, we're going to start writing queries using the DB object, and then once we're finished with all of the queries, we'll do client.close, so we close the connection to the server to make sure everything's nice and clean. So that's the server written, and now we'll go back to our original command prompt, and now we should be able to run server.js, and we should see the output that the client has connected successfully in the end. So there's just a depreciation warning there, which is fine. And then it said connected successfully, and then we close the client, so it's all over and we're done. So hopefully that went well for you and you didn't encounter any errors. If you did, feel free to send me a message on Udemy or Google search, and I'll do my best to help you. In the next episode, we'll see how we can insert data into the database, which we first need to do before we can start querying it. See you then. Welcome back. In this video we'll learn how to insert data into a MongoDB database and then to query it to get your data back. On screen now you can see the code from last video, which will extend in this video to insert and query data. So we'll replace this comment here where we say writing queries with an insert statement. So we've already connected to the DB and our DB is called test. So then what we will do is we'll do db.collection, and then we have a collection name, say my collection. And then we'll do .insert1. And then we'll add in our documents. So maybe I have a document with name Adam and age 21, for example. And now I've just successfully inserted something into the database. Usually you'll want to know the result of this insert. So what we'll do is we'll make a callback function like so, and then we can do the normal things. So there's a few things to note here. The first is that we need a DB already, and we've got that, and then we need a collection, and then we can do .insert1. If you want to insert many, then there's a function called insert many which you could replace here, and then instead of one document here you can have an array of documents here instead. So then you could insert multiple documents into this array and insert them all at the same time. When we connect to the DB, if the DB with that name hasn't already been created, it automatically gets created, and the same for the collection. So if we don't already have a collection called my collection, which we don't, then it will be created, and then it will insert the first document. And if you remember, there is a document is basically a JSON object, which is why we've inserted JSON. That exists in collections, and there can be as many collections as you want in a database, and there can be as many databases as you want. The callback function will return you an error and a result. And obviously if there's an error, you can either log it out or deal with it in whatever way you want in your production app. And then the result will return the number of it will return a number of things which you can find from the documentation, but one of the most useful ones is result.ops.length, which tells you the number of operations that was performed on the database. So if you only inserted one document, then you'd expect result.ops.length like this. You'd expect this to equal 1. But if you were to insert 3 documents, for example, you'd expect that to be 3, and that's a good way of checking how many documents have been inserted. And then to query from it, we can do a similar statement, db.collection, my collection, .find, and then we can put either nothing, just an empty document, and then our callback function, or we can put a document template in there, and that document template is a template of how to search for the document. So an empty document will just return, oh sorry, I forgot one parameter. We need to do .find like this, and then .toArray like so. And then we'll get an array of results back. So if you just put an empty document like that, so just empty curly braces, it will return all of the documents in the collection. Otherwise, say I put name Adam here, it would only return documents with the name Adam. So in this example so far, it would only return one document. But if I were to insert another one with name Adam age is equal to 30, for example, then it would return 2 documents. One important thing to note that I forgot about is we need to put this one inside this one, because these are asynchronous functions. So if I were to do it this way, it would try to query the database as the insertion operation is still occurring, and we would get nothing returned. And that's how you can query and insert data into a database. The MongoDB driver has great documentation, and you can see the documentation on screen now. And there's an entire API reference, so if you want to learn more about how to insert documents with more detail, and also how to, for example, only find one document, then this guide is for you. In the next video, we'll learn how to update data, so change its value, and also delete data from the database. See you then. Welcome back. In this video, we'll learn how to update data in a MongoDB database and how to remove it. On screen now, you can see the code that we have taken from the last video, and we're just going to extend it. Now, as I told you in the last video, it's important to remember these are all asynchronous functions. So if you wanted to ensure they're executed in order, you should put them inside the callback function. So for example, this would fail because Adam wouldn't yet be inserted. But just so we don't have so many indentations, I'm going to do them separately, but you should remember to keep them indented if you want to make sure that they all happen in sequential order. So to update a document, we can do the usual db.collection, my collection. Now you might think this syntax is a little bit verbose. I mean, I've entered db.collection, my collection twice. You would be correct. There is an easier way. You could create a variable called collection is equal to db.collection my collection, and then you could use that in place of this line in all the statements. So if you want, you can set a collection as a variable, and that is entirely possible too. So that wouldn't be a terrible idea if that's what you wanted to do to make your code a bit cleaner. But for now, we're just going to leave it separate to make it more clear what we're doing, and also to show you the fact that you could replace it with a different collection name. So then we're going to use update one, and then we have first of all the matching document. So this is the you define a document template that it matches on, so it will only update documents where the name's Adam, but it will it will update the first matching document that's the name Adam. Since we're using update one, it will match the first one it finds and then update that one and then stop, and then we define what we want to do. So we have another document, and in this case we want to set age equal to the 42, for example. And then we have, as usual, our usual callback function too with error result. And result again will tell you the number of operations that performed to check it happened, and if there's an error, then you can deal with it. Set is a MongoDB basically key value, I guess you'd call it, and this will, if the field age exists, then it will modify the value to 42. It will replace the value, but if the age field doesn't already exist, it will create a new field in that document. There's also the unset query, which if the field exists, so it will just if this exists, then it will just remove the entire age field. And there are other ones as well, which again you can find in the MongoDB driver reference. Okay, so that's how you update. If one final note, if you wanted to update all documents the match name is equal to Adam, then you could use the update many function instead. And then finally we have delete, and delete is exactly the same as this one, except we just replace it with delete one, and we get rid of this part here, so we don't need to say what we'll do. So if it will match, it will delete all documents with name is equal to Adam. Sorry, not all, again, just the first matching one. Just the first document it matches when name is equal to Adam. But if you use delete many, then it will delete them all, and then again you have the error and result callback. Not too complicated, I hope, and hopefully you understand it all. The mini project at the end of this chapter will be explained in the next video, where we'll test your understanding and extend the chat app from the last couple of chapters with database functionality. See you then.